Beep, 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 beep. But welcome to the Court of the Digester. How are we, everybody? I hope you're well. Let's talk STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and maths. But particularly, let's talk about science as in the Science Museum. Now, science is fascinating. Scientists aren't always fascinating. They can be quite dry folk, but they do good work. But when they are good, it's fascinating. And I don't mean TV science, where they make an egg float in some direction or other and people go, yay, how clever. I don't mean science that is populist science. I mean the actual science and the stories behind it are fantastic if you look at some of them. They really are, Look at the story, for example, of Marie Curie. Fascinating. Marie Curie. Joan Crawford wanted to play Marie Curie in the film of her life. Did you know that? I think she fell out with Warner over it and he fired her, I believe. She called her an egghead dame. Marie Curie, that egghead dame. Terrible thing to do. So this has sort of slipped us by, but it's not been mentioned by any of the major players. Just by, I haven't seen much about it, but it's worth seeing what they're doing with STEM in some of these museums, which are funded by public funding, by the way, and should be investigated immediately. It's another one of those, I'm afraid. It's another one of those, right? So I love a good museum, right? Go in there, you've got all sorts. It's the insects, right? And the bugs in boxes, and you go, Flobiox magububoob, right? Or whatever it's called, is this thing with a big stick out of its head and a flag in its bum. Right, I love them. They're great, aren't they? Insects are fabulous. There's so many of them. The Science Museum, here you go, has reinstated a transgender exhibit. What's that? What is that? What exactly is that? So what would the Science Museum have in their transgender exhibit? Right, you'd have to ask yourself the question. So they put it up, right, and everybody went, what are you doing? Oi, nutters! Oi! And they took it down. Right? They've obviously had a change of heart because they've got a critical social justice, trans rights activist nut job somewhere in their midst. And so it says here, a controversial cabinet featuring a fake penis and chest binding equipment. This is the Science Museum. This is the Science Museum saying, and here we have the scientific history of the dildo. What? Right. Featuring a fake penis and chest binding equipment was taken down after accusations it was pushing gender ideological propaganda. But an updated exhibit has now been installed. So they've got, oh dear, get back to the drawing board. What else have we got? Don't know, can we 3D print a gaping wound? Well, I don't know. I'll have a word with the gaping wound department. What? However, gender critical campaigners said the restored version was more insidious and pushes a sexist view of the world. With its original title of boy or girl removed, the display cabinet explains why some people transition to their preferred gender and how puberty blockers are sometimes used to achieve this. So they're pushing puberty blockers. The Science Museum. It's public money. Threaten them with the removal of their public money. Come on, Tories. God, we really are wasting our time with these people now, aren't we? It's going to be 4 years of hell after this, and then possibly another 4 years after that. It's a horrifying thought for a lot of the people that are in this fight, that we may not be here to see it stopped. We'll never know. It's a horrifying thought, but it's true. A sign on the display in the museum now says, "Who am I?" Gallery. Who am I? Gallery, which covers various aspects of biology from DNA to aging. States, this is what they said, some people's gender doesn't match the sex they were born into. No, it matches the sex they were born into. Right? Because gender is, masculinity or femininity. And you could say it's likely that this individual will display masculine traits because gender is binary. Right? Doesn't mean they're going to be like, I'll be back. Or, get them at them. It doesn't mean they're going to be either of those things. It means that if we're looking at stereotypes like gender, the idea of this one with a penis is going to have a more masculine stereotype, and this one with a love garden is going to be more feminine type. It's just the way it is. Because that's the unreality of gender. They could be either. The cabinet includes personal testimony, oh, here we go, lived experience, from a transgender man and woman who state respectively that they have experience living as both male and female, and that transition was liberating. Mental illness is liberating now, is it? Up is down, black is white. Mental illness cannot be liberating. Nervous breakdown can be liberating. Had a couple of those. Nervous breakdown can be liberating. When you go slightly off centre for a while, and then you come back and you're like bouncy and refreshed. Strange thing. I had him 8 years ago and at ECT did the same thing to him. Yeah, once he had the ECT, he was fine. It's almost like a reset and we don't understand why. Really weird, isn't it? So that's what they're saying now. So experience of living as both male and female, which they don't, so that's a lie. So the Science Museum is lying to you. The Science Museum, who works under the basis of falsifiability, where's the evidence? What do we think? What do we know? What can we prove? Is lying to you. Directly. And doing so by saying, this is not our story, this is their lived experience. As if their lived experience, there isn't a non-living experience, is there? As if their lived experience, which is A, their opinion, or their story, or their narrative, which will be replete with lies and nonsense because they can't go back. The Science Museum is lying to you. The updated display also includes the testimony of a non-binary person who describes the relief at learning living outside the gender binary as possible. They're not living outside the gender binary. They just think they are. They're mental. Absolutely mental, the way they. Displays state that puberty blockers are sometimes used to arrest the onset of adult development for children unsure of their gender identity, adding that such intervention is complex and has raised debate. It's not complex and raised debate. It hurts them. You unbelievably stupid. What do they call people that work in museums? There's a word in there for them. What is it? Curators. Right? What next? You're all nuts. You're supposed to be curators, not cult pushers. It's utterly degrading for you, this, I think. Yeah? The current iteration of the boy or girl display comes after a series of rows over the exhibit, which the Science Museum vowed to change in 2021 following complaints about a lack of mention of transgender. Oh, they want to be in everything, don't they? Can you imagine if they could go back through time, again like Back to the Future, and add the word transgender into various things that were famous? Can you imagine? I have a dream, transgender, ladies and gentlemen, that one day we will be judged by the... Can you imagine? Right? And the meek shall inherit the transgender earth. They didn't push it and everything, right? The museum said it would work with the Museum of Transology. Off. Just off. All right? Museum of Transology. To make the space more inclusive. Just off. Okay? Museum of Transology. Wankers. But the end result caused concern as the cabinet contained fake penises used to mimic male appearance, as well as compression vests to flatten the female chest. It's absolutely outrageous. Why wasn't there a dilator curator? The contents of the cabinet were accused of pushing propaganda rather than biology, and the display was taken down. However, the reworked display continues to cause concern. The fake penises and chest binding equipment may be out of sight, but so are the obvious warning signs for parents, says Helen Joyce. The display continues to push a sexist view of the world. Likewise, the non-binary testimony, this identity is not just not fitting into stereotypes, but it relies on a very stereotypical view of the words based on men's things and women's things. You can't get away from any of this. The display states that X and Y chromosomes, which govern human differences, are not universal. These are nut jobs, right? The Science Museum, of all places, where you would expect these loons to be told to be given their marching orders, wouldn't you? The Museum of Transology. Get in the bin. I'll see you later.